My name is Michael Orobo, and this is my final project on disruptive technology for the ESOC 318 class. Um, so for my project, I will be exploring a disruptive technology that affected the world greatly and in many numerous ways. Uh, in my opinion, it remains one of the greatest inventions in communication technology till date, and that technology is known as the telephone. Uh, This innovation has enabled us as human beings to connect with each other far and wide. We're able to connect over mountains and across the seas to the very ends of the world. The telephone has taken how we interact with each other to a whole new level. The telephone is an instrument that was designed for simultaneous transmission and reception of the human voice. The telephone is simple to operate and it offers its users an immediate personal type of communication that cannot be obtained through any other medium. Uh, because of this, telephone has become one of the most widely used telecommunication devices in the world, as billions of people are using telephones every day, numerous types. Below is just a picture of a brief evolution of the telephone and the disruption it brings. Early development. Um, The telephone, in my opinion, remains one of the most disruptive technologies created by man to date, as it single handedly changed how communication works in our world. Before this development, in the 18th century, there were a couple of devices that were already in existence that allowed people to communicate with each other on a much more smaller scale. An example of this is the first acoustic telephone, which was developed in 1672 after Robert Hooke found out that sound could be sent over a wire. In 1838, Morse, he developed the Morse code after discovering that he could send the messages by pressing down and releasing a button at intervals. And finally, in 1858, the telegraph came into play, which was the first invention in establishing long range communication. So basically, before the telephone came into existence, these devices were developed and were in use, and the telegraph was the most significant one in taking communication a step forward before the telephone was created. These are pictures of some of the early models, as we see the telegraph on the left side and the numerous kinds that used to exist. And we see a picture of the simple acoustic telephone in use with a string and two cups on each end. The disruption. Um, the evolution of the smartphone has always caused a disruption in our society since the beginning, as it affects digital markets and both and economies of scale. Uh, Winston argues that the development of the new media forms from the telegraph and the telephone to computers. Satellite and virtual reality is the product of a constant playoff between social necessity and suppression. According to Zaman, the evolution history includes the disruption of personal digital assistant, digital camera, and portable music and video players. Uh, Another major disruption of smartphone is uh, it caused the appeal of the laptop and desktop computers. Uh, the accumulation of smartphones' disruptive power has been due to the transformation hardware innovation into software gadgets. Uh, the developing process and how this telephone was made. So the telephone has gone through a series of evolutions from when it was first created till the smartphone that it is today, and I will be going over those evolutions right now. In 1672, Robert Hooke created the first acoustic telephone, as he found out sound could be sent over a string wire from a mouthpiece on one side to an earpiece on the other. In 1838, that's when the Morse codes were developed by Samuel B. Morse and started using transmitting them through patterns. In 1858, Cyrus Field sought to lay the first transatlantic telephone cable, connecting England and the US by telegraph. This project was met with a couple of setbacks and difficulty, but it was completed in August of 1858. In 1867, however, since coming to America as a teacher of the deaf, Alexander Graham Bell Alexander Graham Bell had sought a way to transmit speech electronically. So he invented the telephone in March 1876. So the telephone didn't really come into play until 1876 when it was developed by Alexander Graham Bell. Um, in 1880, we see Bell set up his lab and he worked to improve on his inventions. And the result was the photophone, which was capable of sending sound on a beam of light. Bell made what was essentially the history's first wireless call. In 1915, Bell makes the first coast-to-coast phone call in January 1915. This was the first long-distance call from a landline. Bell's call helped the long-distance. Because of this, long-distance call became a reality. Its continuation in 1927, the first telephone service from the US to the UK was set up in January of 1927, and the first phones were radio phones, but they began to fade quickly as they had interference issues. In 1930, AT&T created a two-way video telephone called the iconophone. This iconophone let people see, hear, and reply to each other in real time. The idea here see much commercial success. So basically, this was FaceTime before FaceTime. In 1946, an electronic gizmo known as the transistor was created by Bardeen, Walter Brayton, and William Shockley. This will replace large vacuum tube systems and allow computers to be merged with electronics. And this was the beginning of the smartphone development. This was the major turnaround from radio phones to more smarter phones and newer age models. The first transatlantic telephone cable makes calls much more affordable than the radio telephone system it helped to replace. In 1962, the Communication Satellite Act is passed. This allowed the use of satellites in telecommunications. In 1964, Charles Cowell and George Hockham, they published a paper proving that fiber optic communication was possible. And in 1977, the FCC officially launches the first primary cellular test network, although it only opened in a few select areas like Chicago and Washington DC and Baltimore. Finally, in 1981, the first automated commercial cellular network called 1G Generation is launched in Japan. At the same time, Nordic mobile telephone systems established in Denmark, Finland, and Norway. In 1992, the world's first commercial text message was sent out, and it was written and sent by employees of a company known as Logica CMG. In 1993, the first smartphones came out for the public to buy. IBM created one called Simon, which had touchscreen and could send and receive faxes. Sprint opens the first communication service in 1995, and it was the first cellular network designed for private use for individuals who own cellular phones. So Sprint was like the first group to make personal calling and calling on a cellular phone a thing. And then in 2003, technology is developed to transmit phone calls over the internet protocols. Long distance charges could be avoided through the use of established computer networks. So basically in 2003, communication became more and more internet related, and in 2008 we see both iTunes stores and the Android market open up for smartphone users in 2008. These heralds the beginning of a huge surge in the popularity of apps, yet another disruption that was created due to the smartphone. Finally, in 2010, smartphones continue to develop and grow better, and the first 4G handset is released in the year 2010, bringing data onto consumers' phones at blazing fast speed. Here's some photos of newer age smartphones. You can see the iPhone, the Samsung, uh, the Huawei, and many others newer models that are being developed in our society today. Here are some impacts and developments that the cell phone has had on our society as a whole. Um, Due to the telephone, communication has further evolved with the use of the internet as a means of communication. Email has made it easier to connect with clients and re-inform it instantly. Um, the further advancements of cell phones with smartphones makes it easy to reach employees and customers wherever they are. The evolution of communication and the increased ease for both individuals and businesses has helped make a global economy possible. Without the ability to communicate with each other instantly, e- it would be much more difficult to conduct business with countries on the other side of the world. Um, Another impact it has had on our world is the telephone has made it possible for businesses to be located anywhere in the world. Employees may work locally or they may telecommute from home. The internet is another communication tool that has developed through the disruption of the telephone. Um, the telephone has also opened the doors for communication and changed the way that businesses and individuals communicate with each other. And it is giving rise to web conferences, which allow freedom of the telephone communication with additional benefits of being able to see presentations and meet each other instead of communicating over the phone. And just like this pandemic that just went off, Zoom is another way telecommunication has gone further. Um, in addition to this, the digital camera was added to telephones, which caused a major disruption to the film camera industry and its inventor Kodak. In 1999, Japan unveiled the Kyocera VP210, the first cell phone with a built-in camera, and soon after this, smartphone makers integrated camera features, along with the progression of camera sensors, resolution, compact plastic lenses. They started to emerge, causing disruption in other markets like compact still camera markets. Uh, to further this disruption, innovators started adding radios and music players to smartphones. With the release of the iPod in 2001, this was the way Apple was able to avoid bankruptcy, as their innovation caused a disruption in the market. As the innovation of adding music players to the smartphone caused a disruption in the market. However, in addition to the phone features, Apple was also focused on multi-touch based user interfaces. The iPhone's adoption of the multi-touch based user interface as a replacement of the full QWERTY keyboard and stylus created a significant higher appeal to the other dominant designs. Hence, the iPhone emerged as a force of disruption to both existing smartphone designs and their makers. For the future developments, uh, I've been able to come up with three of them, and I think one it will be making phones with that consume less power, need more less power and battery to function. You know, like chip vendors have been talking about smaller and more powerful and less power hungry chips for a long time, and that is currently in development. Now, development of such chips is likely to accelerate. Companies like Intel have focused on putting more transistors on a chip and making their products more powerful, said Anthony Townsend in one of his research. The second disruptions that I think will happen is the is mobile commerce, as cell phone users are increasingly using built-in communication technologies to swipe their phones, and they're using their phones to pay for things, which is making credit cards and debit cards a little redundant, which might make them redundant in the near future. And the third one is augmented reality. This allows like users to look at things on the phone and make it look real and alive, almost giving like a 3D aspect of things, making it clearer and easier to understand. These are my references. Thank you.